I am Virginia Kearney, and my job in Baylor is to help people get grants. And I'm really focused on faculty grants. But as part of that job, I've created these workshops for how to get grants. These are all the workshops are available for anyone who wants to. I have them both just as a PowerPoint, but I also have them as PowerPoint with my little circle video on them. So it kind of gives you the comments like I'll be giving you in this workshop. And so they're available on that. And I think as he's recording this one as well. So we'll see how I go on that. I wanted to, I'm not sure how to get okay, there we could go. This particular workshop, all my workshops are really created for faculty and for early career faculty. So you'll see some things that don't completely apply to a postdoc, but that's really where you're heading. And I said don't apply, but that's not exactly correct. What I mean is they're not applicable quite right now. Like you're not doing a K01, NIH K01 award because that's not one you can do until you become a faculty member, but you would be eligible for a K99 RU award. And that's what you would get as a postdoc that then moves into being a faculty member. I'm not going to go in detail into any of those grants because I have other workshops that are specifically about that. So workshop contents today is really to talk about how the whole point of this workshop is to help you to think in a different way. Not because you've been a graduate student for a while, you're an undergrad, then you're a graduate student, now you're a postdoc. How long have you been postdocs? How many years?
5 months.
5 months, okay. Okay, so as you go through, is this your first postdoc for both of you? Okay, as you go through this process, undergrad and graduate school and postdoc, you're really working on other people's projects. It's although you're contributing, and depending on the project, depending on the person your mentor, it depends on how much is your ideas and how much is their ideas, and also just the project. If you entered into a project which has been ongoing in the lab for a long time, you're following along in the details that they've been doing. But this workshop is having you step back and think about your own career. And that's really the biggest difference, is this perspective of what am I want to do with my career, and trying to get you to think a little bit differently. And then we're going to look at a timeline for grant applications. Like, how do you think about that? How long should I prepare ahead of time? And then developing a research marketing plan, which especially as a postdoc is important because you are, everyone sees you not only through your application that you'd be making for any job, whether you're going to go for a faculty job or whether you're going to go for industry job, but they also are looking, what do you have online that's available? And that becomes more and more important as I think we continue on. So are you interested? There are 2 people in the room, and maybe are there a few people online also? So you can ask them maybe in chat to give some responses, and then you can just tell me what they are. I'm just interested. Are you interested in a faculty job? Are you interested in an academic job? Or are you thinking more industry? And I see that it goes both ways. Or do you not know? So, you don't know yet. So you kind of either way. How about you? Academics. Okay. A lot of what I talk about, because I'm working with faculty, is toward the academic career. But even if you're in industry, you may very well be involved in doing grant planning or trying to think about what kind of industry you want to be involved in. And a lot of the things I take are from having worked with lots of different faculty, but also now my own children, because I have a son who's in mechanical engineering and a daughter who's in computer science. And I'm actually having to think through some of their ideas about what they want to do for their next steps. So it really helps getting those experiences. So the first thing is you really want to think about developing a strategic research plan of, there's so many different demands on what you're going to do. And so you really want to be thinking about if you're looking for an academic position, especially, the goal that most granting agencies, and I'll backtrack just a little bit, because if you want to have a successful academic career at a university like Baylor, you're probably going to need to be looking towards grant funding. Another alternative pathway is to go to a mostly teaching institution where maybe they're not going to require grants and may not require research, but most people who are trained and doing postdocs at a research university are kind of interested in staying in that same vein. Maybe you would go to a smaller research university. Come on in. I'm so glad you could come. So you want to be thinking about what is it I want to be doing for my independent research career? Do you already kind of know what you want to do, or has that not been, and is it similar to what you're doing now? Different? I'm just kind of curious.
Research, yes. But it's not the same fields that I'm working on right now.
Okay.
My background is actually biotechnology.
Okay.
But right now I am working on biophysics, but I would like to switch back to core biotechnology.
Okay.
So it's a combination of what I have done in my master's and my PhD, but it's very different from what I'm doing right now. I'm developing something very different right now, but that's not my end goal.
Okay, that's really important to be able to articulate that for yourself. And that's really what I'm talking about in trying to think through what have I done? And also part of it is as you look towards getting that next position, whether it's a postdoc or a faculty position or biotech, is you want to make your own story. And honestly, that is my, what I spend most of my time doing is helping faculty members write their grant story so that the person who wants to fund them likes the story. And so thinking about how the things you've already done fit into what you want to do. So you have to kind of know where you want to go. And obviously you took a position that's not doing exactly what your full-time is, partly because sometimes that can give you some things that you didn't know before, but you're moving in that direction. And that's what I'm really, as you think about your own career and where you want to go, I think it's really important to really determine, this is my direction. Do you know where it is you want to go, or are you still thinking about that?
No, I'm still thinking, but because I'm just starting.
Yeah.
But yes, I know that I want to continue with best management. That is the thing that I'm studying now. And this is the thing that I studied for a long time.
Okay.
So it's most about chemical ecology of
Right.
insects. Yes.
Yeah, which is so interesting.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's I know that I can apply in the industry too. It's very similar.
Oh, that's very true, because it does match a lot of different industries. And actually, I've heard things about, you do mosquitoes a lot of, but there's a lot of other insects also that.
Yes, I used to work with kissing bugs. Now I'm working with mosquitoes.
Okay. Oh, that's really interesting. So my first thing is we're going to talk about how to create a strategic plan. And this is really kind of your path to that. What I'm using terms that come from NIH because they're the clearest, I think. And when you're looking to get your first career award from NIH or NSF, they're looking for you to become to give you that grant so that at the end of the grant, you become what they call an independent expert or an independent researcher that has your own unique agenda. It could be similar to someone you work with, one of your mentors, but it's not going to be exactly the same. In fact, I've seen people that had trouble because they had worked with a world expert in a particular field, and then they continued doing that same thing. But the problem is when they were applying for grants, they're competing against their mentor, and it's a lot of us are in small fields, right? There's not that many people that are doing exactly the same thing. So you want to be thinking about, what is it I want to do? It sounds like you really are thinking in that direction. And well, you also, and I didn't get a chance to meet you. I'm Virginia Kearney.
Yeah, I'm Jayashree Kulkarni, pursuing postdoc research fellowship in electrical and computer engineering department.
Oh, terrific. Who do you work with?
My advisors are Dr. Yangli and Dr. Brian Gardner.
Okay, I know both of them very well. I'm actually working with, you know which Yangli? Is it Mr. Yangli?
Yeah, it is a Mr. Yangli.
Yes, okay. I know both of them, but actually we're always having trouble because you're right, you're in electrical. There's another Yangli in Yangli 3 in environmental science that I also work with. Yes. So the things you're going to be doing is, of course, establishing yourself as an expert in that area, publishing on your own, developing collaborations with other people, and really looking towards some external funding. So here's some questions to ask yourself. I'm not going to read every part of the slide. They'll all be available for you to look at, but I'm going to just point some things out. As I already said, the most early career researchers are looking to become independent researchers, independent research agenda. You want to decide whether you want to continue to work in this area, switch to a new area, and how to distinguish yourself, as I said, from the people that your mentors are. And you also should consider, this is really important, and something you can easily do. And that's decide, if this is an area I'm interested in, is there funding for this? I have met people that come to Baylor, they're great researchers, but they haven't clearly thought through or don't know, because nobody helped them look at it, the fact that what they do is not something very many people want to fund. It's just, there's a small pot, and that of course makes it a lot harder to get your funding. So the next two slides help you kind of think about how you would go in that direction. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong, better move that mouse. So you want to list these are tasks that you can do yourself on your own for your own research. Is you want to be looking to see what is your research area like? And the best way to do this, you could, of course, I know you already look at journal articles, right? You'll probably keep up on the journal articles in your particular area, and so does your faculty member. But I think one of the best places to go for additional information is to look at what has not yet been published, because as you well know, when you do a research project, then you finish the research project, and then you write up the research, you write the paper, and then you send it in, and maybe you get it rejected and have to write it again, and so it takes a while. And then even after you get it accepted, it's still a little while before it's finally published. So what you're looking at when you look at the research papers is research that probably was completed 6 months to a year or even farther ago than when you're reading it. So how do you find out what people are doing right now in their labs? That's where you look at the grants. Now, this isn't going to be what everybody in that field is doing, because not everyone's working off the grant. But anybody who has money, that's who you want to be, is going to be on here, right? So NIH reporter, for if you do NIH work, NSF award search, which will be probably what you would, well, Brian Gardner, I've worked on a grant with him in NIH. So yeah, actually both of those guys, both of your mentors. And then Pivot and Grant Forward are, so these are specific search engines, and they are awarded grants. Now, I have whole, some different series of grant workshops that tell you how to look through those. But both of those search engines also have their own, like if you go there, it'll tell you how to search for things. Basically, if you go to NIH Reporter, you put in, I love Reporter because actually they have this matchmaker where you can put an abstract of your work in Matchmaker and it pops up everything that relates to what you've done. Isn't that a nice use of algorithm? Whoever figured that one out. NSF is a lot, even the looks of NSF is, they're the tech people, right? All the computer science people are NSF. So I don't know why their website does not look as good, but so it doesn't have quite as good of a search engine, but you certainly can do a keyword search. The other thing is if you have a few people that are the top people in your area, you can just put their names in and find out what are they doing that, like this is the paper that you mostly are working on, what grants are they working on right now? Now you're not going to get, a huge amount of information, but you will get their abstract, which will give you enough that you'll have an idea of what it is. So that's actually kind of a really good key. The other thing about doing that is as you get ready to do a prepare grant yourself, then this is where you go to figure out who is it I need to talk to, what program officer, or maybe there's somebody else in the country you want to collaborate with. This is a great place to find names for that, because each one of these grants, along with an abstract, also has the names of the program officer for that. And program officers want to talk to you when you're getting ready for grants. They like to develop people's careers. So I really encourage people to find that out. Pivot and Grant Forward are different. They are actually search engines for grants if you want to find a grant to apply for. So those also could be useful, but not in terms of assessing what other people are doing. And then I think this is kind of an interesting question to think about. It's actually, my husband's been working in his field for a long time. And things have we've all been, I typed on a computer when I went to school, now I typed on a typewriter when I was an undergrad. So things have changed a lot in what you can do. You won't know exactly what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen in 5, 10, or 20 years, which will be your career, your next 20 years. But you might want to think about asking mentors that you've had their ideas about the projection of the future. One of the things I'm hearing that I'm actually helping my daughter with is she wants to do big data stuff. And she says, where is the data? Where's the biggest amount of big data? A lot of it's in microbiome, right? She's also interested in brain and neurodegenerative diseases. So trying to ask them, what do they think is going to happen in the future? Kind of help yourself pinpoint where you're going to go. And think about what skills you might need to develop to be a person who's at the forefront in that field. Obviously, one thing I think about a lot is what kind of computer skills, programming skills some people need sometimes, and what different instrumentation you might have to work with. The other one is so after you assess the field, you want to assess yourself. And actually, this really goes a lot with what Blake's, if you haven't seen Blake's seminar from last time, he did a great job of showing what are the different resources we have at Baylor to help you develop some of your skill sets, and how do you assess what things you might need to do. Does anyone know something that you think you need to develop, whether it's a technical skill or whether it might be a soft skill, like getting the, learning how to lead a team, or learning how to talk to mentors? Do you have any ideas of ones that you would like to develop more? Communication is sometimes one.
Yeah, I have no background in programming,
Okay.
but I think that since my field is single molecule detection, I cannot work without machine learning any further. And
So you think you need machine learning?
yeah, so,
Okay.
and the basis of any machine learning is going to be either Python,
Yeah.
MATLAB, and all those kind of things. So if I don't know that, I probably cannot progress. So I think that's the biggest barrier I have right now. I had no interest, and I had no basis of like programming languages. I don't like it at all.
Yes.
But now I can't work without it.
Actually, my husband's class that he teaches for undergrads is to address that exact problem. He decided that he actually, he's teaching undergrads. Most of them are pre-med here at Baylor, right? But he's already decided that most doctors are probably going to need to have some kind of at least familiarity. Even if you're not programming yourself, you need to be able to read stuff that other people have. And so he has this very user-friendly class that teaches R and programming, and he talks about it all the time. I can't remember what the other ones are. And that's probably the kind of thing you need. And there probably are ways you can get that here at Baylor. This is a good place, the computer programming area. So you are in, I'm blanking out, I know you're biology, you are, so Megan, who do you work with? So you're in the ESC. So think there might be some, I don't know whether they let postdocs take courses or my husband, I have to tell you, my husband and my daughter, who's now just a senior in undergrad, she taught herself Python as at 14. Using my husband had a course that he kind of gave her, but she just taught herself. My husband says the best way to learn programming is Udemy courses, which I guess they have deals where you get a $500 course for $10 or something periodically. He said he thinks that that's probably the best way to learn, because you're looking at the screen and what they're doing while they teach it, and you do it at your own pace. So a lot of those are available. You just have to get over that idea of, which I haven't, because he keeps on saying, you can learn computer programming. I said, no, I'm going to English, no other languages. So that's excellent to recognize it. You have time to kind of develop that. It's really, really important. That's really good.
I think it's turned out more than that. Everybody has, yes.
And actually,
We always need this skill, and it's something that nobody is in the chance.
Yeah.
about programming, or is there something else that you
Oh,
like?
no problem,
Okay.
yes.
And actually, that is really interesting that you both recognize it, because you're not in the same area. It could even be that you could go through, Blake, if there's several people that are interested, maybe you guys could get together.
Yes,
You know,
I'm sure.
And just encourage each other to do that. And like I said, my daughter was 14 years old. She's pretty smart, but she's not that smart, honestly. She isn't. You could do it.
Spending like a lot of time on it
Yeah.
to practice. That's the only part. Once you understand the basic of scripting, it's not difficult.
Right.
It's just that getting that much amount of time to completely dedicate
With
to it.
everything
So,
else you're doing.
yeah, so it's like I'm doing a lot more so that you can make space to learn new things. That's the only problem.
That is really true, because what you're doing every day in your lab is stretching your brain. Oh, I know, I did meet you at the Mayborn. I think you're the one who explained to me all those things. Sorry. You look familiar.
It's fine.
Yeah, you know me. My brain's a little flighty on that. Yes, okay. It is hard. And a lot of the other faculty who are older, my husband flipped over. He's actually a plant pathologist. He now works in cancer research. That doesn't make any sense. But that's also why I say some of these things, is that he's found he had to flip and do different things in his career. There was zero interest in plant evolution, which is what he came to Baylor doing, because he actually did kind of a definitive paper that showed that in his particular virus he's working with did not evolve, unlike AIDS, which was, that AIDS was evolving on his, after multiple stresses over a year and a half in 7 different natural plants for this virus, didn't hardly evolve at all. And so it's okay, I answered the question, now what do I do from here? So sometimes those things happen. So here are just some ideas of things you can look for in your career sketch. Then next, identify your career development needs and your resources. Again, it sounds like you're already kind of thinking through this. Are there any soft skills that you feel like you would like to be better in? Soft skills being like non-research skills, but personnel skills or organization or communication, anything in particular that you feel like? There's a whole list of those. And actually, it's not a bad idea because honestly, when you go to get a job, your recommendation letter is going to talk about your research skills, but they're also going to talk about your soft skills. Are you really a dedicated person, like who's always on task? Are you a person who works well with others? Are you a person who can lead a team? And I think sometimes we're not as self-reflective about those skills as we ought to be. And actually, that's what the National Postdoc Association has, a list of them and also ways you can kind of get better in that. So it's not a bad idea to kind of think through what of those things you would like to do. And then things like, we've already talked about training, but are there some conferences that you might want to go to? And I know that whether you get funding to go to conferences is sometimes difficult, but think about if there's some ones particularly that might help you to get to know other people and I always suggest that before you go to a conference, you really look up the people who are going to be there for sure, the people who are doing papers, and see, are there some people I've got to make sure I go see and try to figure out a way that I can actually spend a little time with them. I think that's really helpful. Also in identifying your mentors, your collaborators, your colleagues. You've already have a list, kind of keeping track of those. I think it's kind of an undergirding thing that I suggest people keep. A regular contact, it doesn't have to be like every week or every month even, but at least a couple times a year, writing back to someone who's been a mentor before, especially if you think they might be helpful for you in the future. Let them know what you're doing, or someone you might want a recommendation for. Keep in contact. I know myself, sometimes I'll help someone or I'll make a recommendation and then I never find out that they got that award or they, and you actually kind of feel good about that if you helped them in some way, but also it means that they become a little bit more invested in who you are. And maybe they're just someone that you want to come ask a question for, or send your grant to be edited. And that's actually a really big job to ask for someone, but if they're invested in you, that's the person you want to kind of keep on your list. And that is not just people that are your mentors, but also, colleagues, developing colleagues here at Baylor. When you leave Baylor, I hope you leave with a list of a few people that will be lifelong friends, but also lifelong research colleagues, which doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be exactly sharing research ideas, but you can share, like if you're doing a career award, you can look at the example of someone who's doing a career award in a different field and get a lot of information. It doesn't have to be exactly your field. And honestly, it's very difficult to find sample grants that someone else has written. They're mostly not there. I have some on my website that are publicly available. There aren't very many. So if you have a friend who might be willing to share, their grant that they got awarded, that's actually very valuable. So you want to develop some friends that will help you with that. And also, what makes a good mentor? Someone who has attributes you want to learn from, someone who could possibly be interested in collaborating with you. And that's also, I think, something you can, there's so many people here at Baylor. So you're working with one particular person, but you're probably making friendships with people in other labs, and I'm hoping you have a little bit of opportunity. I always encourage both students, but also other faculty members, and of course, postdocs, to drop in and talk with some of those people. If you're interested in their research, you have to be careful because you don't want to take too much time, but especially faculty members that are a little bit more advanced are really usually very interested to talk with you and to help you and to give you ideas. So I would say aim for like a 15-minute conversation. Almost anyone would give you 15 minutes, and a lot of times it'll be longer. Once you get in there, you may end up talking an hour. You can ask career advice. You can ask, what do you think are some, in our field of electrical engineering, what do you think are some of the most important things in the future? What do you think are some skills we need to learn? Kind of come with a little list of a few questions, or sometimes just once you get going, they may just talk and give you information. And by talking with you, and you share what you want, in your career, they become a little invested in you, and maybe they're not a long-term mentor, but often they will tend to be that way. And what I've really discovered in working and getting older myself is that as you advance in your career, you're really excited about what you've done yourself, but then you begin really thinking about how can I invest in other people? Because actually that becomes who's going to come after me? And that actually becomes something people sometimes want more than what they're actually doing. My husband just, there was someone that came to Baylor and he got a chance to know him. He's like a superstar researcher. And my husband was really surprised because what this person wants to do right now is develop a class. Actually, I think it's a class, it's a computer class. And he asked my husband, who's done a lot of these computer classes, gosh, could we do something together? You know how to do the computer part, I have this part. And my husband was really, kind of surprised because he thought, you're just like, you're doing so much research. But he said, yeah, but I want to really invest in the future. And I think that a lot of people kind of feel that way. So you don't feel, I would encourage you to not feel intimidated and to make sure you go out of your way to try to talk with people. Make sure it's a comfortable time for them and ask them, when could I come in? But if they're there, if they have office hours, that's often a really good time. So here's some different kinds of mentors, because no one can be like the mentor that gives you everything you need. And so I think it's important to think about, who do I have as a research mentor? Who do I have as maybe a content mentor in a particular area that I'm really interested in? Who are people that are really good at getting grants? Like maybe they're not even in my field, but they know how to get grants well. They would be willing to help me learn to write grants and might be willing to read my grants. That's a great resource if you'll have somebody like that. And then the other one is a career life mentor. Who is it that seems to have successfully managed to do great work at work, enjoy their work, but also had, some kind of a balance with the rest of their family. And those, again, may not be who you're working with that is the best person for that. So you might want to look around and see if there's somebody else that you think would work in that way. And just some tips. And I think I've really kind of said, how to approach a mentor and what you want to ask. You want to make it clear. If you want to have something more than just a 15-minute conversation, maybe you have that 15-minute conversation and you just think, I really need this person to be my career life mentor. And maybe you just ask them, would you be my career life mentor? And then see if they'd be willing to set up, talking with you, going out to lunch once a month, something like that. It does help if you have something that's kind of on a schedule to keep track of developing that relationship. This is something I read in a book and I've thought about it. And then after I thought about it, I realized I began to see it actually in action in groups of researchers that are collaborating. It's called a research affinity group. And the idea of the affinity group is as people have researched a long time, they get a little bit tired and weary and a little maybe jaded, because of all the difficult things they've gone through. And sometimes those people really work well. And the fact that they have been successful makes it easier to get grants. If you're collaborating with someone who's been very successful at getting grants, whose name is known and they have lots of track record, they'll have an easier time getting the grant. Maybe it shouldn't be that way, but it generally tends to be that way. But if you're a junior faculty member who maybe just has more interest, energy, excitement, really, maybe because you're not quite as jaded, you're willing to go in some different directions, actually that could be a really good synergy. And you may find that those older researchers are actually kind of enjoy having you as part of the team. I mean, obviously research groups are built that way, right? You have your senior person, you have your graduate students, senior person, graduate students, undergrads, and you guys in the middle. So that's part of it too, but think about that as you're developing your group that you're working with. Okay, creating the grant application the first time. I kind of go through this pretty quickly. I have specific things of how to find grants and what to do. And if you guys are interested in actually doing some grants at where you're at, whether it's working with your PI or whether you're doing one for yourself, I have some resources on that you can, Blake can help you access. Basically though, I think it's really important to know that there's three kinds of grants. There's like these unsolicited NSF, NIH proposals, and then there's specific ones that are like career ones, like the K career, and the one that would be appropriate for you is the K99 route, which means you get 2 years of funding for the last 2 years of your postdoc. Then you get a faculty position, you get 3 years of funding for that. And I would have to say that up till very recently, there weren't that many people at Baylor that were eligible, their mentors were eligible to be supporters of that. But that has actually turned the corner. We're actually, in fact, we got some of our first ones the last couple of years. So that's a pretty good one. There's also foundation funding, and those are things often for sometimes smaller awards, sometimes larger ones, and those are some links that you could look at for that. So how do you find funders? Take my class, identify. This is actually something you might want to think about doing at this point in your career. If you kind of know what your research area is, generally most research areas have about 5 to 10 funders that are pretty much it. And it's actually not that hard to figure out who they are. Several of them will be like, if you're in electrical and engineering, you're going to have NSF, obviously. You'll have DOE, the Department of Energy, Department of Defense, maybe, depending on what you do, and maybe Department of Transportation. Those are kind of your federal ones. Maybe if you do the correct kind of research, you could do National Institute of Health, if you have health-related research. So you kind of want to know what those are. And then within those big entities, like, is there a smaller section of biology? You know, if you're doing NSF, you're doing biology probably in what you're doing. And then you also want to kind of know what are some foundations, you know, nonprofit foundations that give money in your area. And I'm off the top of my head, I'm not thinking of one, but one that I've been dealing with a lot lately is the Lilly Foundation, which for Baylor is a big one because it gives grants to religious universities for religious purposes. And so there aren't a lot of agencies that do that, but it's perfect for Baylor. And they've given us $2.5 million this year. So we said, let's ask for some more from there. So you want to identify what fits your particular niche. And then you want to make a list of those and kind of keep track of them. And what are the grants that are coming up for them? And here's my funding goals chart. So maybe it's a little early in your life to start thinking about this, but it's something you want as you're looking towards the future. You want to think, you know, what are some past projects I've done? What are current projects? What are future projects? You know, how do those projects forward my ultimate goal? And what kinds of funding do I need? It's a little bit easier with a group like this. Like when I'm working with arts and humanities, they sometimes don't exactly know what kind of money they need. You know, I'm going to look at things in the library. So, okay, the library's there, it's free. What you might need is like travel money or money to stay there or money to, you know, get copies or something. But for you, it's usually pretty clear what kinds of funding you might want. But right now, actually, you might even be looking for funding to go to a conference. And one thing I tell people that a lot of people don't know is most conferences have small budgets for graduate students. I don't know about postdocs actually, but they're for early career faculty to go, early career people. But they come out, usually you have to snatch them fast. So if you identify a conference you want to go to, see if they have that and apply. Often it's kind of first come, first serve on some of the ones I've seen. And then do a grant timeline. If you, wherever you're at in your postdoc, if you think, I really do think I want to apply this K99 route, I think I've got a good shot for it. You want to apply for it, you have to have 1 to 2 years more of postdoc training. So if you're in your first postdoc, which you plan to do the second postdoc, you might wait till that second one. If you think this one's gonna lead to where you want to go to career after this, then you might want to apply your 2 or 3 of your postdoc, and then sometimes you want to be able to do 2 cycles of application. Like I applied early and then got some feedback, didn't get it, but I want to apply again. And that's really important to kind of create some strategies of those sorts of things. It might be that there's 2 or 3 different ones that you could apply for. And then you kind of want to leverage, when you apply to those different ones and get yourself a timeline. That's a simple timeline chart. And then I always suggest that people kind of think in terms of a 5-year plan for grants, and actually you're all ready for that, right? Because probably in 5 years, would you think you're probably going to go getting a non-postdoc job? Okay, so yes, please. So you're ready for this. Make your 5-year plan. Decide what you want to be doing each year. Decide if there's any grants you need to be thinking about along the way. And especially plan for that, a little bit of pilot research and plan for that resubmission, because that's really key. For the example, the NSF career grant, which probably, all of you really, if you stay kind of in your general field, would be able to apply for that. Totally should do that. If you have a faculty position, you get three chances on that one. Probably don't want to do it your very first year because you're usually setting up your lab and getting going. But your second, third, and fourth year are the best times to apply. If you don't get it in that fourth year, you're also getting close, hopefully you will, but you're getting close to tenure. So you're going to have to figure out some other things to do, but that gives you your best chance. Maybe some people skip that fourth year and go out on their fifth year. Here's just a sample one I had for humanities, just because I happen to have it, but you can kind of see, like, this is a plan of like when I'm going to be looking for my grants, when I'm going to be going to a grant workshop, and here, like, I'm going to, maybe you put in there, I'm going to learn Python. Okay, this is it. I'm going to do it this year. And this is when I'm, and then you also, it helps. A lot of times people don't really look at the due dates of things until they're like too close. So it really helps if you've decided early enough when, if you know those due dates of different things, you can plug those in and give yourself that. And also sometimes if you have a timeline, you have a tendency to actually follow through with the timeline as opposed to not having the timeline ready. I think really important with grant writing is to just keep on going. Honestly, my husband made a mistake. He came in as already having a grant, had a great career, but he came to a place where there was no one else doing any molecular science at all. And so it's like nobody knew, he had no colleagues that knew anything about what he was doing. And he'd come from Cornell University where there was a lot of colleagues. And so he really was, and this is before the internet was very baby. So there wasn't like you could easily contact other people except by letter. It was true, we used to use letters. So he did his NSF career and he didn't get it. And he said, oh, okay, I guess I'm just not gonna make it, I just can't do it. Whereas if he had redone it, there's a really good chance, because most people don't get it the very first time. We have had some people that have gotten theirs the first time, but generally you get those reviews. And then honestly, what I really tell people about reviews, it's kind of like reviews for a paper, or is it called reviews from your paper? Is, I don't know if you've experienced that, but I've seen a lot of this in grants, is a lot of times they actually make it better. Or sometimes they ask a question, I can't answer that question, A, without doing a lot more experiences, or B, I think that's a dumb idea. But sometimes they actually have a really good point. And I have many times found that the reviewers' reviews of the grants really were important, and when they revised it, it was a much better project. And that's actually more important than almost in a paper review, because you haven't yet done that work. So if you get the correction before you do the work, then any problem that you might have had is not going to happen. And I've many times seen that happen in reviews, and I really appreciated that and realized, okay, so that idea that you get to submit something a couple of times is good for you, and even if you didn't get the money, you've got a better project plan than you would have had otherwise. So it's almost like getting this free advice from the top people in the field, which isn't so bad. Last thing, maybe it's a little bit trendy, but I think having a research marketing plan is not a bad idea. So it means, of course, you're publishing the traditional things. You publish in research journals, you give posters and talks. At conferences, you meet other researchers, you talk by phone, email, in person with senior researchers, and then you would also register, make sure, are you all registered in all these things? Do you have all your stuff?
Yes.
Yes, I was gonna say, a few years ago, a lot of people told me no, but I think it's kind of like flipped over, especially since NIH now, I think NSF requires some of these for their grants. So I'm glad, because that makes it a lot easier it doesn't take very long, but.
Focus also there. Google Scholars Scope.
Oh, okay.
So that is also good.
Oh, that's good.
Website where we can promote our research, or automatically it gets integrated our research scientific articles, articles. Yeah.
Terrific. Oh, I would love it if you send me that
Sure.
link. That would be great. That would be terrific. Okay. Because some of these I actually picked up a few years ago. So I'm not, I'm not the social media person. So I don't always know what's the newest thing. People will tell me things and I have to try to put those in. This isn't so much for you guys because and actually in some ways it's a little outdated slide because Baylor's been going around redoing all their department websites. All marketing came through and did them. When I first did this, everything was kind of a mismatch. But this is still something that is live, the idea that you and your faculty members should have an excellent lab website. I see some excellent lab websites. I see some not quite as excellent lab websites. And you definitely want to have yourself there some way, and if you're on the website, you should have your picture, it should have something about you, and it should have a link to your LinkedIn. And then you want to stay there as an alumni from Baylor later. So do you all have a pretty good lab website?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Great. I'm glad to hear that. I just found that, honestly, this came out of an experience I had. I was working with a professor who did not get an award that we thought he was going to get. So I said, I wonder what's different between him and this other person. So just randomly, because I was looking at the award, and this is the person that got the award. So I clicked and I went to his website, and I saw his website was beautiful. And he had this picture of like 1 billion people that worked in his lab. It wasn't that many, but it's like 15 to 20. And then I went to our professor's website, and he was not quite so beautiful. And they had like 3 people. And I thought to myself, it shouldn't influence somebody, but I think it could. And they are, especially this is a foundation, it wasn't it. There's more strict rules with NSF and NIH a little bit, but a foundation, sometimes these kinds of awards are not scientists. They're like foundation members or the person who owns the foundation, and they're going to just, Google you because they don't really understand what's in your proposal anyway. So I thought, oh, that actually could make a difference, that appearance that you have. Let's see. I don't remember this. Okay. So learning how to, all of you probably do the NSF, and I saw both of you at the Mayborn. So you're getting a chance to practice that, developing your skills and communicating both to scientists, but also to the public. Yes. Have you participated in that, communicating your science to students or other people in the public?
Yeah. Right now I'm mentoring 2 PhD students of Professor Yamdi. Yeah, so we have that communication and discussion of research work where they may get stuff or may I get stuff, or sometimes doing the measurement. So yesterday only I have finished on-body measurement. So I am basically designing wearable antenna. So in near future our body will be full of sensors where antenna will communicate here and here. So like this we are developing research. So it's very important that electromagnetic signal, absorption of electromagnetic signal in our body. So that experimentations we were performing yesterday in our lab.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's really interesting. I haven't actually worked with either one of them for a couple of years, so I don't know about this project. I love hearing about new things that people are doing. And that's really what's wonderful, I think, here at Baylor, is that people have certain skill sets and then they'll apply it to lots of different things. That is great to hear. There are some resources. I mean, the Portal of the Public is Sherry used to be in charge of Portal of the Public. She's now working with our team, and she helps promote Sherry right now because she's really helping people to design some of the broader impacts, implement some of those things, and she's a great resource for all of us. And then there's also this Academy for Teaching and Learning. I don't know exactly if they have programs for postdocs, but if you are interested in learning a little more about teaching, they have a lot of kind of informal things you could go to, but also classes that you could be a part of. If you want to develop your teaching skills, it kind of depends. But if you're looking for a faculty job, have you had a chance to do teaching before? At any of
Just informally?
Yeah.
I have been teaching my grad students when I was a senior PhD scholar.
Yeah.
Then I was working as a RA for some time. So I had 2 undergrads and I have 4 grads, 2 undergrads right now.
Okay.
So I have informal experience of teaching, but not formal.
Not like in front of a class. And actually,
That's super informally. I was not supposed to take that.
Oh, I see.
I took class with somebody.
Okay. Yes, and that happens sometimes.
Yeah,
That's really
that's
true.
the informal part.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So I do think, partly because I observed this with my husband when he got to teach, and he actually is just a fabulous teacher. He had done some teaching as a postdoc, and that's a whole long story how he got involved in doing that as a second job. But it's pretty intimidating to go somewhere and then all of a sudden have to set up your lab and also start teaching something it depends, like Baylor has become now very early career friendly, because most of the time, I think your first semester you don't teach, or maybe teach one class, and then second semester, maybe one class, you know, they kind of ease you into it. But some places you might go, especially a small, it's Mary Hardin Baylor, which is a close by university, you know, you would step on campus and you're teaching 4 classes in the first year, and that it can be hard. So just let you know that that's available. If you feel like I would like to learn a little bit more about how to develop a class. In some ways, the part that's easier than when we first started teaching is there's a lot of things like, and are you familiar with Canvas? I don't know if that intersects with what you do. The teachers do that, but through Canvas, a lot of people will post syllabus ideas and, you know, all kinds of class things. So that's probably wherever you would go if you become a faculty member, a teacher. You'll have access to a lot more materials than used to be available. But anyway, just want to let you know that that's here. And there are just some informal ones. Sounds like you have one that she was going to send to, you know, social media, talking about what you can read lab. Of course, you have to be careful if your lab has intellectual property, that you don't want to reveal something that you're not. That sounds like some of what you're doing is probably intellectual property. So you want to be careful about what you share. Always want to talk with your faculty member, which isn't probably a problem for you, but I know some faculty members have had trouble with like their undergrads who are doing research in the lab. You know, you gotta make sure that they tell you what they're going to be presenting. And that's my next one about protecting intellectual property, and you'll be working, I'm sure, with your faculty members on that. So if you wanted to do some homework, it's really kind of developing your own strategic plan, thinking about who your mentoring team is, creating your grant funding timeline, maybe thinking about looking for some grants that you might be interested in, and updating any online, your online profile if you have that. But those are kind of my last things that I think about. And I think here's a list of my other, all my other grant workshops. I think that's updated. So you can see that I have this main workshop series, which has like 8, and this is number 5. And then I sometimes have done workshops for specific groups. There's a postdoctoral one, and then there's this K99 RU, and then for some specific ones. There's also something that's really valuable, and that is NSF and NIH generally have conferences every year, except for some reason they don't seem to be having a conference this year. It used to be you had to go to the conference and pay a lot of money to go, $1,000, you know, to get in. It's like $500 for registration. But since COVID, they started doing virtual conferences, so anybody can go for free. Have you gone to any of their conferences?
Yeah. I took COVID advantages where registration fees half of normal conferences. So I have presented more than 10 conferences.
Oh, wonderful!
Because there was no question about taking leaves. There was no need to make up travel plans and leaves, and just I need to pay the registration fee, which was half as compared to virtual conferences. So that gives really benefits to me.
You know what? And there's actually some researchers there in humanities, let's say, where they're actually trying to create a system where people can do more virtual conferences. Because the interesting thing to me is I went to the NSF conference one year. It was the year right before COVID. We went in May, and then there were like maybe 1,000 people. And then the next year it may have been like a year and a half by the time they got here. Things were weird with COVID. But there were 13,000 people attending. And I thought that's wonderful, especially because you get people outside the US who can never hardly come, you know. And but the other great thing about these, and they're not easy to find, but they're there, is that both of those conferences are all online. Everything about them is online. And you have to download them. So I actually did download all the ones I thought were most important, and I have them in box folders. You're welcome to pick ones that you might think are interesting. The thing I realized as I've gone to many of the conferences is they redo the exact same presentation with new people doing the presentation. And maybe they color the slides in a different, you know, they go from the blue slides to the green slides, but it's basically the same stuff. So whatever you might download from here would be useful for you for at least a few years. And I think it's a great resource. But if you go to the conference, the best part is they let you, there's certain sections where you can just wander around and talk to a program officer for free, and just, you know, they have like a virtual place where you wander in. And then at the end of every presentation, there's always a Q&A. And so if you're going to write a K99 award, this is a perfect time to ask for any questions you might have. And I often find it's the questions that people ask that are more valuable. And most of these conference PowerPoints actually have the full conference where you can hear the questions too if we go on the website. You basically just kind of hunt around because they're not on the main NSF and NIH website. They're kind of a separate website. And as soon as I can figure out when their next ones are, I'll tell Blake and have him announce them to you guys because I think it's really valuable. Hopefully it's going to be, maybe they're going back to regular ones. I hope not. I hope it's virtual again.
Through conference only, I got this opportunity to work as a postdoc.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
through
great.
conference only, yeah. In 2022, I came at a Denver, which is very flagship, which is flagship conference in our antennas field. And where I met Dr. Ifana Madam,
Okay.
and she recommended me under Professor Yangali. So through that her network only, I got here postdoc opportunity.
That is a great story because I think it's true is you get a chance to meet with people, really talk with them, people that maybe you wouldn't have an opportunity to meet where you're at.
Yes.
So
yeah.
excellent. I really like that. And I love the idea of virtual. I hadn't thought about the fact that maybe there are a lot of other virtual conferences out there too. So that's a good thing to look for. I think I'm definitely done. Does anybody online have any questions or any of you guys have questions?
There was a question in the chat about getting access to these links, and so I just went into Box and found the folder that has all those in it.
Yeah.
And put it in the chat.
Thanks.
I'll email you also.
Right. I will ask these. A lot of people want my materials, and I keep on getting, now that we're having some of these things on YouTube, I've gotten an awful lot of LinkedIn requests for them, and these really are created for Baylor people. You are a Baylor person, you're welcome to do it, but I do ask you don't send it off to somebody else. You can share the information with someone, but don't send our actual PowerPoints and stuff elsewhere. So I think that's not too hard to ask about, but I think that's it. Anything else? Blake's always here. He's a good guy. Take advantage.
I have one question. Say, for example, my research work in X domain, and I wish to write research proposal in Y domain. So will this really affect for the acceptance? Because I may not have any publications or any hands-on experience in a Y domain, but I'm expert in X domain. So can I go without any publications or?
So you don't have, so the area you want to write a proposal, I just want to make sure I understand, the area you want to write a proposal and you have no publications
In Y domain, yeah.
Okay. You know what? I think you can.
Okay.
It depends. In some ways, that's when you want to be careful about what you write. You want to, what they're looking for is that you show that you can do this work. And you can show that by publications. You can talk about preliminary data, which many people do, and give some of that in your grant. You can also talk about specific verifiable abilities that you have or skill sets that you have. And then you would probably want, if you're often you'll have like a mentor or someone give you a letter who can verify, yes, she does know how to do X, Y, Z. Certain grants are asking for more preliminary work than others, and then there's other ones that are really high risk grants where maybe you haven't done any publications. I think the other thing it depends on whether you're doing a research grant versus a career grant. Is this a research grant that you're looking at?
Yes, for research.
Yeah. The other thing I always suggest is you can, if you can finish the grant, the hardest thing is actually writing your first grant all the way through. And I honestly think even if it's a grant that you don't think you have a great chance of getting, there is a huge value in just finishing all the papers that you have to submit and doing it. Because you feel like, I did it. And then that second grant is a lot easier. So what I suggest, if you think you're ready to write it, do it all, send it off, wait for those results, wait for the reviews, and in the meantime, start trying to get some preliminary data or a publication.
Okay.
I realize that certain areas are harder than others. Like some areas you could, without getting money, you could probably do the work. Other areas, if you don't get the money or that equipment in the grant, you can't do the work. So, but if you can, try to get something done, because then if you get back and they didn't give you the money, you can revise it, add what new stuff you've done, and then resubmit, and then you have a stronger chance.
Thank you.
My husband's actually just asked me that question about a particular grant he's going for. He's got some preliminary stuff, but no publications. That if he's going for an RO3, which is an NIH grant that is for like small amount of money, just getting started grant. And it says you don't have to have necessarily a publication in that area. So, but you have to show that you can do it. Anything else?
I have a question, but it's more related to the career in general.
Yeah.
When you know that you don't have to be more than postdoc and you have to look for a faculty position. That's very difficult.
It's very difficult. Like, when am I really ready to do that?
It depends, it depends on your skills, it depends on the qualifications that you have, or everything together.
Part of it is actually, and part of it is you're going to go to a field and the market. Are there a lot of jobs out there? Are there, like my husband, when he went to get this job, there were 3 jobs in the entire United States. And one of them was in the middle of nowhere. It's like, oh no. Foster, Washington, I think it was. So I think one thing that's really wise is to keep track of faculty positions. I don't know where you look for that right now, because I'm not, figure out where is it I should look for what faculty positions are available, wherever, however you want to be, here in the US or someplace else. And track how many, and just take a look at ads. Give yourself, once a month or once every couple months and spend an hour, find out what positions, and it probably, they come out at certain times of the year, so that's probably like spring. Sometimes I think, I don't really know though. Ask your main faculty member will be able to point you where to find faculty positions. Look at what they're requiring and look at, like, do they really want you to have 5 years of postdoc or not? We hire people here who've had no postdoc experience, if they're the right person, an unusual person that fits the position well, and we want to snag them. So, and other people, you really have to go through certain positions, you might have to go through postdocs to be able to be ready. But your underlying question is, when do you feel like you personally are ready? I think this workshop probably is in some ways your answer. Do I feel ready to do an independent career? Like, I feel like I have enough skills that I can come up with my own independent research agenda. I have an idea of what I want to do that's not the same as what my mentor is doing. And I have the skills. I may not have every possible skill, but I probably could get started. And I'd even have, ideally, you even have a couple of research ideas. And it can be spinning off some of your mentors, but it has to be moving in the trajectory of something that's different than what they do. And that's where you really do want to talk with your mentor as well. Like, what do you think? Do you think I'm ready? So you want to look at the job market, you want to look at yourself. And sometimes you might jump into the job market and just try a few interviews out, see how it goes. And if you realize, oh my goodness, I'm like really not ready yet. Or you might say, hey, it looks like I have a pretty good shot. You're getting some interviews, you get the applications, and then maybe you're ready to go. Yeah, that's an excellent question. Because, and it can be really different in different fields, depending on, and different times with, some ways in academia, some schools have had a really hard time after COVID of getting their students back. I talked to someone at Cameron University. We had the advanced instrument workshop. I don't know if any of you were involved in that. It's mostly chemistry. And they said that pre-COVID, maybe a few years before that, they had 5,000 students and now they have 2,000. So obviously if you've gone from 5,000 to 2,000, there's not a lot of, there was actually a new faculty member who came, so they did hire someone, but that makes it hard. Whereas at Baylor, we're pretty steady, we're hiring lots of people. And so there are universities out there like that, but I don't, maybe not in all the different fields. Have I come to the end?
I have one
Another question?
other question from the chat. How important is it for a postdoc today to secure a grant this year to make oneself more marketable to get an assistant professorship next fall?
Oh, it'd be fabulous if you could get one. But I don't think you necessarily have to have one in order to get an assistant professorship. It depends on where you're going and what they expect at that particular university. I definitely would suggest that you try, like I just kind of said, you submit your first grant. It will give you a huge uplift. I'm trying to think of quite the word, but having done that first grant, it's so complicated the first time around that it's pretty daunting if you're also trying to start, doing, first year professor, you're doing classes, you're trying to get, all your students, you're trying to get your research together and do your grant. When I work with faculty members who've never submitted a grant ever, their eyes just kind of glaze when I tell them all the things they have to do. So it is a great idea to try to submit a grant. And then if they don't get it, that's okay. You've tried it. And actually that would be part of your resume, because everyone knows the awards of grants are like 10 to 20%, and that's just so if you submitted a grant and didn't get it, no one's going to think terribly of you, because that's just the way it is. So, but they'll know that you're a person who knows how to write a grant and knows how to submit it. The other thing I should tell you that I learned from this advanced instrument workshop is these are all smaller schools in Texas, smaller than Baylor. And most of these, and I'm talking with all the faculty, it was a grant workshop for the faculty members. And one thing they told me is that most of them have no grant support at their school, like no administrative support. They have to do everything and figure things out. That's really complicated. And so if you have done the grant once yourself, you're actually going to be a little bit better prepared for whatever the situation is at your school to be able to know how to support and do grants. People at those schools actually there's a lot of grants available because the government really wants those schools to be involving students in research, and they have lots of grants for that. But they actually know it's so hard for those people to submit grants that there are actually grants for people at places like Baylor to work with people at places like a historically Baptist Black university to help them get a grant. So, that's kind of part of the thing.
Follow-up question. So you put the grant application that was defined on your CV?
Yes. You say, let's see, I've seen it different ways. Probably best to ask your major professor what they would have you do on it. But yeah, you put grants submitted, and then grants awarded. And I see them on CVs all the time. Yeah, the fact that you've submitted a grant is certainly worth noting, particularly early in your career. Like if you're later in your career, you may not put all the grants you ever submitted. Because if you think about that, if it's a 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 rate, then that's a lot of ones you would have submitted that you didn't get awarded. That's anybody who knows anything about grants will be completely unfazed by the fact you didn't get your first grant. Nobody's going to think that's unusual. So it feels bad. It always feels bad when you don't get what you submitted, but it's not unusual. Yeah.
All right. Let's we'll at 4:30.
With that, if I'm informally participated in the writing NSF grant, then can I write in my resume?
I would ask the person who submitted it whether you can include it in your resume.
Okay.
And what you would do is you'd list your role. Are you anywhere on the grant? Like your name anywhere in the...
No, my name is not there, but indirectly, I was there to support writing that grant.
Yeah, it might be that instead of listing it on the, lists of your accomplishments, you include it in your letter.
Okay.
That's probably the best way.
Okay.
You would definitely include it on your, your
Recommendation.
listing if your name's on the grant as a co-PI or even a collaborator. But if your name's not there at all, but I do think it's very important for them to let whoever you're writing to know that you did participate in writing this grant, and then you detail what you said, what you did, and then it really helps if you have a letter from the person you worked with that verifies that. Yeah, she was very helpful because her expertise in X helped us to write this grant better.
That is a great suggestion.
What's that?
No, it's fine. Does it apply for both? Like for instance, before I moved to US, I did write a proposal for a postdoc project
Okay.
in my own country. It was a national fellowship.
I would include that. I'm guessing at this stage of your career, you don't have 50 pages of your resume, right? So you want to let them know all the efforts that you put forth. Like I wrote a grant that I ended up moving, and they did get the grant, So I never got a chance to do the grant, but I wrote it, you know, and so I put that on my resume early in my career, just so they knew that I knew how to write a grant and that we got that grant. And it was, you know, what it was about computers and stuff, so that, especially back then, looked pretty important, so.
One more question from the chat. Do you have any other foundations besides Lilly and Templeton that fund research on religion? I don't believe in a separate NIH to support my research on religion and education.
Oh, yes, I just actually was put up a list this today, talking to someone who's working at Chapel on that. Yes, the Wabash Foundation is another one. If you look on our, we have a funding list, which we call our curated funding list, which is, my first job at Baylor was I looked through all kinds of grants to find ones that we thought we could fund at Baylor. Then I took all those different grants and I put them on lists that are by department. And so we no longer have anybody who can actually update them, but basically the links are still good. And, you know, you just have to go through the link and find out whatever's updated. And today I happened to help someone because she's in Chapel. So she's not really a researcher. I wanted to help her find some ones. And I found like 5. There's New View. It's a Christian college group. There's another one, but anyway, those are all on those 2, and you probably can find the links.
Yeah, I just found the link to all the curated.
And that's actually it's worthwhile for you to look at them too. It's on our website. You can probably send that out to you. Look at biology, look at whatever. Some of them are cross purposes. Like if you do health research, you will do health list as well as the electrical engineering list, as well as maybe something else if it fits you. And obviously, NSF, NIH, all those ones you're going to know anyway. But what's useful about those lists are those foundations that might give you some research dollars. And it's not exhaustive, but honestly, it does have probably a lot of the main ones that you would want to know about. So especially in the area. And that one I worked really hard on, the religion area, because we are a religious university and there aren't very many. There were like 10. So but the Wabash might be a really good one for him too. So, and we've gotten funding from a lot of those people too. Any other questions? I know it's time to go, so people may have things to do.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you taking time to be here, and thank you, Virginia.
Absolutely.
And all right, we will go ahead and close out the Zoom. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.